or cookies door to door, or popcorn tins door to door. I'm pretending that there is a band candy sale, and 7 middle schoolers were sent out with their little catalogs to sell candy to support the band. And those 7 kids came back, and this is how much in US dollars these kids sold. Each of the 7 kids. So I'm looking at a population. There were 7 band kids sent out to sell candy. So one number that I might use right from the start is the number 7. And I've used the lowercase letter n to represent that I have a number, 7, elements of my population of band kids. Now I know middle school bands have more than 7 kids in them, but let's say this is the trumpet section. The trumpet section has 7 kids. And I tell you that it's a population. All right, so I want to be able to describe this. Maybe I'm the band director, and I want to go out and tell other people about what my 7 trumpet players did with their band candy sales. Maybe I want to brag. Maybe I have to report it to somebody, like, I don't know, the principal. Well, there are many numbers I might use to describe this small set of population data. And one of those numbers I might use to describe it is the mode. M-O-D-E. There is no standard symbol for mode. We just say mode. The mode of a data set, whether it's a population or a sample, is defined to be the number that appears most often in the data set. Sometimes we say the number with the highest frequency, where frequency just means how many times did it appear in the data set. Well, I look at my data set. I see 10 once, I see 15 once, I see 20 once, I see 43 times, and I see 100 once. So, which number appears most often in my data set? 40. Now, because I am actually reporting a data value which has units, I want to state my units. My mode is $40. State your units when you're reporting your descriptive statistics. You might be wondering, what happens if there's another number that appears 3 times? Is it the mode too? Sure. We might have a bimodal set of data where 2 numbers both appear the same number of times and more than all other numbers. Then we'd report 2 modes. But if there's more than 2 numbers that appear the same number of times and more than everything else, yeah, we say there's no mode. It is possible to look at a data set and say no mode. For example, if those other 2 40s hadn't been here, I would say no mode, because everybody appeared the same number of times, once. Another number that we might use to describe our set of data, if we want to go out and talk about what our 7 trumpet players did for us in terms of band candy sales, is the median. The median goes by many names. One name that you might be really familiar with is 50th percentile. What that means is half the numbers are greater than or equal to the median, and half the numbers are less than or equal to the median. That's what we mean when we say 50th percentile. It's the center. It's the number in the middle. Now, when you're finding a median, the most important thing to do first is to make sure that your data values are listed in numerical order. And fortunately for you, I've listed my data values in numerical order. 10, 15, 20, 40, 40, 40, 100. Smallest to largest. Now there are 7 numbers. What I need to find is the number in the middle, the number that cuts the data in half. Now that number may be a value in my data set, or it may not. So where would I cut this in half? Like right through here, yeah? If I could cut 40, if I could cut the numeral 40 in half, then yeah, there's the middle. There's the number in the middle. There's 3 numbers to the left, 3 numbers to the right. 40 is dead center in the middle. The median is 40. You find the number in the middle. It's not necessarily a data value, as we'll see in a little bit. But it's the number in the middle. And in this case, because I have an odd number of elements in my list, the median is the data value in the middle, which is $40. Another number that we could use to describe our data is the mean. This is the word that I'm going to use instead of the one most of you are used to using, which is average. Okay. Average does not have a mathematical definition. I know you think average in your head, and you might have some things going on in your head like, oh, that's the average. Okay. Average is not a mathematical term. Mean is a mathematical term. And the mean of a set of data is the sum of the data values divided by the number of data values. The mean may or may not be a number that's actually in my data set. It may or may not be a number that's actually in my data set. When I have a population, the mean is often denoted by the lowercase Greek letter mu, mu. So I need to take all of my numbers in my data set, add them all up, and then divide by how many data values that I see. So I've added them up already. And gotten 265. And I divide that by 7, Oh, can you see that? Well, since I'm talking about dollars, I don't know, maybe I should round off to cents or round off to dollars. You want to round off to dollars? Yeah, let's do that. It's about, notice my squiggle, $38. It's $37 and about 86 cents. So I have a mean, a median, and a mode. $40 is the mode because 40 appeared more often than in the data set than any other number. The median was 40 because the number 40 appeared directly in the middle of all of the numbers when I put the numbers in numerical order. And the mean, which is the sum of all the data values divided by how many data values I have, is about $38. So you're the band director. Which one of those numbers are you going to report as the best describer of your 7 trumpet players? Are you going to report 40 because it's the mode? Are you going to report 40 because it's the median? Are you going to report 38 because it's the mean? Which of those 3 better describes how much in sales those 7 trumpet players were able to achieve? There is no correct answer. Any of those 3 numbers could be used. I could say 40 and not tell you whether I'm saying mean or median. And often people would say average, and it could mean any one of these 3 things. Mean, median, and mode are all measures of middle. Central tendency are the words that are much more formal. Average is the most informal. Center or middle, kind of in between the formal and the informal. But there are many different numbers I could use to describe middle. Which number more accurately reflects, as a single value, what those 7 trumpet players were able to sell? Is it 40? And if so, is it because it's the mode? More kids sold $40 worth of candy? Is median the better describer because it's the number in the middle? Or is 38 the better describer because it takes all the numbers into account? Mode only takes one number into account. Median takes how many numbers you've got into account. And mean takes the value or the size of the numbers into account. Any of those 3 would be a legitimate report for, yeah, on average, my 7 trumpet players on this band candy sale sold $40 each. Well, that's not true of every kid. It's on average. If I say it because it's the mode, well, it's 3 out of 7. That's almost half the kids. That's a pretty good describer. If I say it because it's the median, half. Well, 3 sold more, 40 or more. 3 sold 40 or less. Okay. Mean, 38. No one sold $38 worth of candy. Nobody. Why would I use 38 to describe what my kids did in selling band candy when nobody sold $38 worth of candy? In fact, 38 would fit in between 20 and 40. 3 kids sold less than that. 4 kids sold more than that. That doesn't feel like middle to me at all. It's kind of pushed to the left a little bit. The mode only takes one number into account. The number that appears most often. Is that the better describer? Maybe. It's a judgment call. Median takes how many numbers you have into account. And what number falls directly in the middle, cuts the data in half. That's really middle. Mean takes the size of all of the numbers into account. So let me change one of these numbers. Instead of 100 being the last number in my data set, what if it were 50? Well, the size of my population hasn't changed. I still have 7 trumpet players. The mode hasn't changed because I didn't delete any of the 40s. The median did not change because I have the same number of data values, but my mean changed. You add these up, you get 215. There's 25, 45, 85, 125, 165, 215. All right, so that's about, we're going to round off to dollars, about $31. Hold up, the mode didn't change. How come? So that one kid that thought he sold $100 worth of candy actually only sold $50 worth of candy. Oops. Didn't affect the mode. Didn't affect the median. Why did it make the mean smaller? Oh, because the size of one of my numbers got smaller. Which of these three is a better describer of the set of data? Again, there's no correct answer. It's a judgment call. It's a total judgment call. Personally, I would argue for mode because it appears more often than anything else. It's what 3 out of 7 kids did. I can see a really good argument for median. And mean, oh dang, it's $31. It doesn't sound as good as either of the 40s, does it? So if I want to report average, one of the 40s sounds better for me as the band director than 31 does. Plus, nobody actually sold $31 worth of candy. Let's look at another population. Let's say that you're in a class where there are 6 exams, each one of them worth 100 points. And your final grade is going to be the average of your test scores. And you started that semester off, nailing that first test 95. Then, stuff happens. Material got harder, whatever. Got an 80. And then you leveled off a little bit. 72, and then 70, 70, 70. Now, if no one said what average meant, if no one told you what average was, and gave you a choice, do you want your final grade to be the mean, the median, or the mode of your test scores? Which would you choose, and why? Again, there is no correct answer. Mean, median, or mode are all perfectly legitimate choices for average. It's just they tell different stories. Mode is about a number that appears the most often. Median is about the number of numbers. And mean is about the size of all the numbers. Now I have these in descending order. I probably want to put them in ascending order. Doesn't really matter as long as they are in numerical order. But let's go ahead and be consistent and stick these in ascending order, smallest to largest. It's easier to gauge differences when you're in ascending order. Mode is the number, if there is one, that appears more often than all the others. Well, it's 70. Median. Oh no! Median. This isn't as straightforward as the last example. Oh dear, whatever shall I do? Well, there are 6 numbers this time. There are 6 exams. Little n equals 6. When I cut this list in half, I'm cutting it through a comma. So when you have an even number of data values, to find the median, you take the mean of the 2 numbers in the middle. So basically you're asking yourself, what number cuts this exactly in half? And then you hyper focus on the 2 numbers in the middle and say, what's halfway in between 70 and 72? Well, the number that's halfway between 70 and 72, you might have already figured out, is 71. The mode only takes into account the number that appears most often, if there is one. The median takes into account how many numbers you have, and the mean takes into account the size of the numbers. To find the mean, you add all of your numbers up. All right, I got 457. Let's double check that. 457 divided by 6. Now that's the actual value of the mean. Can you see that? It's about 76.2 or 76.17 or 76.16 repeating, however you want to write it. It's about 76.2. Given a choice at the end of the semester, if you were in this imaginary class with 6 exams weighted equally and your final grade was the average and you were allowed to argue which one of these was the grade you deserve, which one are you going to argue for? The mode is very much like a good chunk of your grades. Half of them were 70s. The median is right dead center of your grades, 71. But you never made a 71. So why would you choose median? Well, because it's in the middle. Okay? Mean, 76.2. You never made a 76. You made 3 70s, a 72, an 80, and a 95. You say, yep, I'm taking the mean, 76. All right, technically, all three of these are C's. These might be C minuses depending on somebody's grading scale, but they're all C grades. But the 76 feels better, doesn't it? You'd rather have that grade? Why is the mean 76? Why is the mean way over here where 4 grades that you actually made are less than that and only 2 of the grades are actually higher than that? Oh, because the mean takes into consideration the size of the numbers in your data set. Now, since again, this is a population because it's a single person's grades and it's all of their grades, we would denote the mean with our Greek letter mu. And you're probably wondering why I haven't brought it up. But if you had a sample, none of the work changes. So if this was a sample of 6 students on a particular exam out of a population of 1,000 students, and I said, okay, I'm just going to look at this representative sample of 6 students. The computation, how you compute these, does not change. The mode is still the data value that appears most often in your sample, if you have a sample. The median is still the data value that is exactly in the middle, even when you have a sample. The mean takes into consideration the size of all of the numbers in your sample. But the notation that we use for the mean does change. How we compute it, add them all up, divide by however many we got, is still the same. The notation we use is usually going to be something with a bar over top. So you'll often see X bar if X is the letter of the alphabet that's being used to describe scores. I don't know that I'd use X for scores. These are exam scores, so I might use an E. Some people like Y's to represent data values, and they'll put a bar over the Y. Whatever letter of the alphabet represents your data, whatever letter of the alphabet makes sense to represent your data, you can use whatever letter you want. You just stick a bar over top of it, a line over top of it, to represent that you have the mean computed in the same way that we did before when we had a population, but you clarify with your notation that you are looking at a sample mean by using a different notation. Greek letters in statistics are used for population statistics, and Latin letters, the letters we use in our alphabet, you throw a bar over top to denote sample. All right. So there's some measures of central tendency, mean, median, and mode. Any one of those 3 can legitimately be called an average because an average, the word average, is not a mathematical term. It's an informal term. And if you had to have one number that represented all the values in either your population or a sample, would you choose mean, median, mode? There are a whole bunch of other kinds of statistics you could use to represent your data with a single number. But there's no one correct one. So what happens is a lot of times people will report all 3. You won't always have a mode. You will always have a median when you have more than one data value. And you will always have a mean. And you might report all 3. Or you might pick one and say, this is the number that best represents my data. See you soon.